Welcome back to another lesson on circumferences of circles. Today we're going to get a bit of a deeper understanding of the formula for circumference of a circle. And we're going to do a bit of algebra practice with rearranging. First of all, you remember your formulas for the circumference of a circle. If you're given the radius, so like in this circle here, you would use this formula, circumference is 2 pi r. And if you're given the diameter, so like this example here, you'll be using c equals pi times diameter. Now in these formulas, we've got some variables that are some values that change depend on the measurements that were given. For example, in this circle here, the value of the radius might change from one question to another. And if the radius is a different size, then so is the circumference. Sometimes people get confused with these formulas because they see this symbol for pi, right, where it's not an actual number, it's just a symbol, and they think that that's a variable. But pi always has the same value. It's just sometimes easier to work with it as a variable, so to use this symbol rather than its value because it's an irrational number. It's a non-terminating decimal that's very difficult to write the whole thing out, so we just use that symbol. But it always has a value, so when you have an equation with pi in it, don't think that you're stuck because you don't know what pi is. Just pick up your calculator and you've got it right there. Okay? Now, let's get started with an example. If you're given the circumference of a circle, you can rearrange that equation or that formula to figure out what the diameter or what the radius is. In this example here, we're given the circumference is 24 pi. What a lot of people make the mistake of doing here is they say, oh, I already know the circumference, I don't need the circumference formula. But if you want to work out what the diameter is, you need some kind of algebraic equation that you can solve in order to find the diameter. And the equation that we're going to use is the circumference formula, which is equal to the circumference that we're given. We'll always use the formula that relates to the information given. So I'm going to use the formula c equals pi times diameter because I know the circumference is 24 pi, and I'm trying to find the diameter, so I can rearrange to find d. So I'm going to start out with the given circumference, 24 pi, is equal to pi d. You see, I just replaced the variable c with the value that I was told it had. Now, it may look confusing having pi's in here, but it's actually going to be a lot easier because you're going to see that the pi's will simplify and cancel out, and we'll get an exact value for the diameter this time. Right, so if I want to get the diameter on its own, I need to get rid of the pi. That means sending it to the other side. Right now, pi is multiplying by the diameter, so I'm going to do the opposite of multiply. I'm going to divide. So I've got 24 pi divided by pi. That leaves me with d on its own. And if I look at that carefully, that fraction can be simplified. To simplify a fraction, we look for a highest common factor, a value you can divide both the top and the bottom by. It has to be a division, never a subtraction. I can divide both top and bottom by pi, which is going to leave me with 24. So the diameter is exactly 24. Here's another example where I've given you the circumference. I didn't give it in terms of pi, I gave it as a number, and you might think that this is going to be easier to work with. But as you can see, the question asks me to find the diameter to 3 significant figures. That gives me a good hint here that when I work out the diameter, I'm going to get a really big, long decimal value that I need to round. Right, so let's get started with setting up the formula for the circumference. And we're going to use the formula that has the diameter in it because we're trying to work out what the diameter is. So again, I'm using c equals pi d. I know the circumference that was given to me, so I can replace that variable with the value given. So 47.1 is the circumference is equal to pi times diameter. Once again, I want to get the diameter on its own, so I need to get rid of that pi. The opposite of multiplying by pi is dividing by pi, and this is the exact answer for the diameter so far. I haven't rounded yet because I haven't actually put this in my calculator. I haven't used that irrational, really long decimal value, so there was no need for me to round yet. But I'm not quite finished my question. I need to do that calculation. So 47.1 divided by the pi button on my calculator gives me this long, horrible number. I can't write the whole thing out. It keeps going on forever. I've just written everything I could see, and I'm trying to get my answer to 3 significant figures, so 3 non-zero digits, the highest place values, 1, 4, point. Now here's a 9 with a 9 after it. That means it's going to round up. That's going to make this a 0. That's going to make that a 5. So that's going to be 15.0. And that 0 is important because the question asked me to round to 3 significant figures. If I just wrote 15, it would look like I accidentally rounded just to 2 significant figures. So it's 15.0 meters. Right? My units of measure match the units of measure given in the question. They're both still one-dimensional measures, whether it's a straight line or it's a one-dimensional measure wrapped around a circle, which could be stretched out to make a straight line. Right? Here we're looking for the radius. So I'm given the circumference and I want to find the radius. So again, I will use the circumference formula because that will let me write an equation, but I want to use the formula that has the radius in it so that I can rearrange to find r. So c equals 2 pi r, where the circumference I'm given, and I'm given it in terms of pi. Hopefully you now realize that that makes it easier for us. So the circumference 8 pi is equal to the formula for the circumference 2 pi r. Now we can simplify this. We can get the r on its own. I want r on its own and it's being multiplied by 2 pi. So I'm going to take the 2 pi to the other side and divide by it. That gives me 8 pi over 2 pi. Once again, this is a fraction, and I can simplify this fraction by dividing both the top and the bottom by the highest common factor. What's the highest common factor this time? I definitely see both top and bottom have pi in them, but look at the numbers as well. I could divide both of the numbers by 2. So I ended up doing 8 pi divided by 2 pi, left me with just 4, and 2 pi divided by 2 pi left me with just 1. So my answer is 4. If you want to check, you can always take that r value and put it back into the formula, and you'll see that 2 times pi times 4 would make 8 pi. So we've got our radius 4. One last example before we start practicing on your own. This time I gave you the circumference, and I didn't give it in terms of pi. Circumference is just 10 centimeters, and I want to find the radius. So once again, I'll set up the formula for the circumference. This formula that's got the radius in it, so I can rearrange to find the radius. So c equals 2 pi r. I know that the circumference is 10, so 10 equals 2 pi r. And to get r on its own, I need to get rid of the 2 pi, which is multiplying. So I will move it to the other side and divide. 10 over 2 pi. Now this could be simplified, but it's not going to cancel out completely. I can divide both the top and the bottom by a common factor, which is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 2 pi divided by 2, we'll lose that 2, it's just pi. Now this is the exact answer. I haven't rounded it yet, but I'm going to need to round it if I want to work out the actual number value for r. So I'm going to have to do 5 divided by pi, which gives me this long, non-terminating decimal. It's not recurring, there's no pattern in the digits, so I will need to round. Even though it didn't say in this question, generally speaking, if ever you have an answer like this and you need to round to 3 significant figures. So 1, 2, 3 digits. That's 1.59 with a 1 after it is going to stay a 9, so that's 1.59. And the units of measure, centimeters, match the units of measure from the circumference given. Okay, here's some practice for you. So if you want to hit pause and work through these on your own, please do that. The answers are going to come up in a minute. Notice that for the first part of these questions, I gave you circumferences in terms of pi. And I want you to work out the diameter and the radius of these circles. Okay? And then in the second part of these questions, I gave you the circumferences as number values, not in terms of pi. So these ones are going to need to be rounded to 3 significant figures. Once again, working out the diameter and the radius for all 8 questions. Okay, go ahead and give that a go now. Hit pause and hit play again when you're ready to see the answers. I hope you had a chance to hit pause because here come the answers now. Starting with the answers for A, B, C, and D. Those are the exact diameters. I didn't need to round it all. And here come the radiuses. Notice once you've got the diameter, it's easy to find the radius. You just need to half them. Some of you might have struggled with this one over here, where you had a fraction, 2/3. Half of 2/3 is just 1/3. You just need to half the numerator. Okay, on to the last 4 questions. Hit pause if you're still not ready for it. These ones are rounded to 3 significant figures. Notice this one, 0.0127. 0 is not a significant figure because they're leading zeros. They have no value. They're just holding the place value until we get to our highest place values. This 0 over here, however, is between 2 non-zero numbers, so that one is significant. So leading zeros, zeros before we get to the significant figures, are not significant, and trailing zeros. So if I had a number with zeros after it, like 1,000, it would only have one significant figure because the trailing zeros are not significant. So those are my diameters to 3 significant figures, and there are my radiuses, again to 3 significant figures. Notice this one here, 0, 0, 0. Those are not significant. The 6 is, the 3 is, and the 7 is. And here, the 0 is not significant, but the 5, the 1, and the 6 are. Okay, that's it for this exercise. I hope it was helpful, and please send me a note if you have any trouble. Thanks.